I'm joined now by Olympic gold medalist and cannabis advocate, Ross Rebagliati. Ross, welcome.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Ross, let's start with a quick overview because some people watching this won't be that familiar potentially with your past. So in a nutshell, what's your big claim to fame?
Big claim to fame was snowboarding and getting to the Olympics in '98 for the first appearance for snowboarding in the Olympics and winning the gold medal and having it taken away for a positive drug test for cannabis and having it returned a couple of days later, but not before I had been to jail in Japan and all kinds of other crazy experiences with media and paparazzi style sort of for a couple of days was unreal. So
at least you were high.
I wish I was. I wished I was. But it was quite the whirlwind getting to the Olympics. And then, right after the Olympics, I was thrown into the washing machine and I ended up on the Tonight Show a couple of days later. And the whole thing really blew up.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and so out of that, you've created a business, Legacy, and also, I was familiar with Ross Gold.
Right, Ross Gold we still have.
Which is now part of the Legacy family.
Correct.
Tell me about Legacy. What's the concept? What's the product?
Yeah, so Legacy is a cannabis company that's basically around, sports, performance. CBD is a big part of it, anti-inflammatory, topical creams, gel caps with different tinctures of THC and CBD. And it's really kind of the more, so like the Ross Gold brand is the rec brand, it's the younger demographic, and then Legacy is kind of the older demographic. Not old, but when you start getting more serious about your health and your life and something that's sustainable that you can repeat over and over. If you have a family or a high, intense job or something like that, you need, maybe you're at work, you build houses and you have like joints that need taken care of at the end of the day. So yeah.
Okay, so there's an athletic component to this in that you're an advocate with Athletes for Care. You're an ambassador for Athletes for Care. What is the organization about? What does it do?
So Athletes for Care is an organization that really takes the athlete once they've retired from their sport and helps them integrate or reintegrate back into regular, life. And so whether that, means a job placement in one industry or another, whether it's cannabis or
a different industry. Why would they want to do that?
Right. There's a lot of exciting opportunities right now with cannabis and the kinds of jobs. It's the full gamut from marketing right to the growing of cannabis and everything in between. So there's a position for everybody in cannabis, and we just want the athletes to have somewhere to go once they retire. So when they're still maybe at the last couple of years of their career, they can start looking into what they might be doing. And some athletes are more proactive about that, and their sports come with scholarships and whatnot. Other sports don't have that. And for example, I didn't go through the whole snowboard thing with scholarships or anything. So I came out of the World Cup tour and the whole going to jail and losing my medal and getting it back again. And I was a little bit traumatized after that. And it took me a few years to reintegrate just on my own, being a known person and trying to operate as a, myself. It was a tricky situation.
I bet. There's lots of sort of high-level athletes advocating for cannabis as a treatment for post-sport injury-related conditions, especially in football. They're suggesting that CBD has a strong impact on CTE. We've had everything from mixed martial arts athletes to professional wrestlers to football players is big, basketball players, rugby players we've had. So is there a real natural affinity for cannabis among pro athletes when it comes to recovery?
Yeah, there is. And it's been kind of undercover because of prohibition.
Right.
Also because of big sponsorship and corporate involvement in these sports like baseball and football. The whole stigma and stereotype around it really kept the athletes from talking about it. A lot of athletes became dependent on painkillers and other opiates that were prescribed to them by their team in one way or another, from the doctors or handlers or what have you, and didn't really have the cannabis option presented to them. And I think it just from word of mouth and through the grapevine, athletes started learning that there's a healthier choice that's not addictive, that isn't going to affect you and your family once you're retired. And and that's cannabis. And so, these athletes that you mentioned all come from pretty high impact sports, and they would know. So the football players, they're talking about concussion and recovery from concussion and protection from future concussion. CBD is one of the amazing substances that we've discovered that can actually create a plasma layer between your brain and your skull to protect your brain from concussion in the first place.
Wow.
And especially works great for rejuvenating cells that have pretty much gone dormant after a concussion, which we would have normally called dead brain cells, but they're not. And so there's been a lot of science to back up the claims that we've been making as athletes over the years to legitimize, our path forward, basically.
You bet. And so do you see a future where professional sports organizations like the NFL, the NBA actually acknowledge that CBD is a legitimate approach to recovery and remediation of sports injuries?
It would be irresponsible not to at this point. WADA just took CBD off the list of banned substances completely. There's been 1,000% increase in the allowable amount of THC as far as WADA is concerned. And so over the years since they added THC to the list after my experience, they've raised it 1,000% and taken CBD right off it. So there's definitely that pressure on the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball and all the other big sports, rugby, to really look at cannabis again. And not only because of the effectiveness of it, but also to look at the way opiates have kind of affected our society in a negative way, and how we can make better choices, healthier choices.
Sure. So is there a place where we can find legacy brands? Like, are they in the dispensaries? Are they online at this point?
Right now, you can find legacy brands at legacybrands.com.
Okay, great.
Legacybyross.com.
Sure.
We are bootstrapping, and we were part of bringing cannabis out of prohibition into legalization. So we started Ross Gold approximately 10 years ago. During prohibition, we had a dispensary in Kelowna, British Columbia, where we operated for a couple of years before we saw what the regs were going to be for moving forward into the white market. And so we're closed down right now. We have our websites are up, and we're right now currently entering into the new era.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, that's a great introduction to all of your endeavors. I'm so honored to have you here and meet you, and love to have you back soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.